You know, sometimes one sees a political advisor say such silly and reality-defying things. It's easy to break out in laughter. But then one thinks about his own wallet, his own job, and the well-being of those around him. And he realizes that the advisor is dangerous, and his nonsense is undermining truth and goodwill. Hi everyone, I'm Gardner Goldsmith for MRC-TV. You know, once upon a time, one had to watch the wonderful world of Disney, or more recently, Game of Thrones, to gaze at fantasy worlds. But viewers of the January 6th edition of Fox News' The Story with Martha MacCallum were treated to the pixel-pixie dust of Ms. MacCallum trying to have a sensible conversation with a man who clearly is disconnected from economic reality. His name is Jared Bernstein, and no surprise, he's on President Biden's Council of Economic Advisors. And also no surprise, he used to work for the leftist policy-pushing Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. Because, of course, your priorities are unimportant. They have to be sifted through and subsumed beneath the priorities of politicians who cheer the idea of taking your money and pushing it where you'd rather it didn't go, and then who call that America caring. And just like Mr. Bernstein seems oblivious to the fact that he and his political allies employ the euphemism policy in place of the real word force, he also seems completely blind to stark economic reality. Responding to MacCallum playing a video of JP Morgan chief economist Michael Ferroli saying that
we are expecting the economy to slip into recession by the end of the year, just due to the lagged effect of the tightening in financial conditions that the Fed has engineered here, as well as the additional rate hikes that they're signaling.
Bernstein, who appeared to be speaking from the White House driveway, might as well have been on Pluto when MacCallum asked him, given what Ferroli and also Alan Greenspan said about a looming recession, if he has possibly changed his mind to now agree with that assessment. He responded, quote,
"No, I like where I am on that over-under better than where they are. We're talking today about an unemployment rate of 3.5%. That's close to a 50-year low."
At which point anyone with a brain and some self-respect might have yearned to appear on camera and call out Bernstein for him either being completely ignorant or for him being intentionally deceptive. What Biden's advisor magically neglected to mention is that the unemployment rate that he cites includes some rather tricky government sleight of hand. It leaves out the massive crash in workforce participation that's occurred in the U.S. since early 2020. Many Americans have been aware of this, very aware. They've seen or experienced it firsthand since, of course, shortly into the rights-attacking, constitution-breaching, jobs and supply chain destroying lockdowns. They've seen that governors and city politicians imposed all these lockdowns on millions of Americans. And of course, they did it under the unconstitutional label of emergency declared on March 13th, 2020. Almost a year ago, Fortune writer Tammy Foreman wrote about the crash in female workforce participation, noting, quote, "The January jobs report found that 275,000 women left the workforce last month, leaving the women's workplace participation rate at 57%, a rate that pre-pandemic had not been seen since 1988. An entire generation of progress has been erased in 2 years. As of December 2022, total U.S. workforce participation stood at just 62.3%, still an entire percentage point lower than the February 2020 rate prior to the U.S. becoming a medical police state. Even the tax-subsidized and, of course, thus never as concerned about job cuts as we are, National Public Radio, NPR, admitted the truth last November. And the Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS, mentions a few things that Mr. Bernstein conveniently overlooks. For example, as one might expect, even as Bernstein next tells MacCallum about an economy that saw 4.5 million new jobs, as he says, last year, he neglects to mention that many of them were part-time. Many people took on second part-time jobs, and the part-time worker numbers were static. In fact, in December, quote, the number of persons employed part-time for economic reasons at 3.9 million changed little in December. These individuals who would have preferred full-time employment were working part-time because their hours had been reduced or they were unable to find full-time jobs. And the BLS also tells us something else that Mr. Bernstein conveniently neglects to mention. Quote, among those not in the labor force who wanted a job, the number of persons marginally attached to the labor force declined by 231,000 to 1.3 million in December. These individuals wanted and were available for work and had looked for a job sometime in the prior 12 months, but had not looked for work in the 4 weeks preceding the survey. The number of discouraged workers, a subset of the marginally attached who believed that no jobs were available for them, numbered 410,000 in December, essentially unchanged from the previous month. That means that this glorious unemployment rate Mr. Bernstein heralds is as fake as the oaths that most politicians take to protect and defend the U.S. Constitution. It's as fake as the Bidenistas and the pop media fear-mongering over climate. As utterly unfounded as the inflated mortality rates that the politicians and Dr. Science Fauci threw at us regarding Cowabunga 19, and as unsound as the mythically effective jabs they took our tax cash to create. Of course, like a purser on the deck of the Titanic, Bernstein continues to cheer for his sinking employer. Pridefully, he spouts marginally cheery economic news without offering the real full story. And he deflects from two core facts. First, a recession is not measured by employment numbers. It's measured by gross domestic product, by productivity, which is being smothered by the inflated money supply and profligate federal spending pumped out by the Federal Reserve for decades and by the politicians of both major parties in D.C. They show utter contempt for real savings and real investment, and instead boost Keynesian, central bank-funded, tax-injected federal spending that wipes out the buying power of our earnings, even as it removes our ability to spend and invest in what we think are good ventures and products. Second, the U.S. government isn't even constitutionally sanctioned to measure employment, unemployment, demographics, or GDP. Mr. Bernstein's position itself is constitutionally unwarranted, and Mr. Bernstein's arrogance is matched only by his cupidity and his theatrical parade of economic ignorance. Of course, it might not be ignorance. He and the authoritarians in D.C. might know full well that they're not dealing honestly with us. They also might know full well that they're not dealing honestly with their oaths to abide by the U.S. Constitution. What do you think? I'd love to hear and see your comments. Feel free to drop a line to us in the Rumble channel, the Rumble page, just below this video. Check it out. Give us a plus over at Rumble. Remember, they don't censor us there. You can also find us on YouTube where they do censor us. Double check that you are subscribed on YouTube, and please share these videos far and wide. Head over to MRCTV.org and please consider donating to the Media Research Center. Media Research Center, hard work from a lot of great people. And we'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to get your support as well. You can always find us in Facebook, the MRCTV page in Facebook, and on Twitter, and at TikTok and Instagram. And if you want to find me, I'm on Gab as Gardner Goldsmith and on Twitter as Gard Goldsmith. For MRC TV, thanks for watching. I'm Gardner Goldsmith.